The boy hadn't spoken in 642 days, and the world's best doctors had already given up. Machines blinked, charts piled high, and million-dollar treatments had failed one after another. Inside a silent glass room in a private hospital in New York, a billionaire's only son lay motionless, eyes open but empty, as if his soul had quietly slipped away long ago. Specialists flew in from across the globe, neurologists, psychiatrists, experimental therapists. But none could explain why young Caleb Whitmore refused to respond to the world. Not a word. Not a blink of recognition. Nothing. And then, one rainy evening, a tired delivery driver walked in, and everything changed. Before we dive deeper, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected miracles, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts across the world. Ethan Brooks had never imagined his life would intersect with billionaires. He was a single father, juggling 2 jobs to raise his 6-year-old daughter, Sophie. After losing his wife to illness 3 years ago, Ethan's world had shrunk to late-night deliveries, unpaid bills, and quiet moments watching Sophie sleep, praying he was doing enough. That night, the rain came down hard, drenching the streets and blurring the city lights into streaks of gold and gray. Ethan tightened his worn jacket as he rushed toward the hospital entrance, balancing a large food delivery order. It was just another job, another tip that might help cover rent. But the moment he stepped inside, something felt different. The hospital was too quiet. Too pristine. Security guards watched every movement. When Ethan reached the reception desk, a nurse quickly checked the name on the order and hesitated. The food was meant for the Whitmore family, the richest name in the state. Everyone knew about them. Everyone knew about the boy. Ethan didn't care about wealth or fame. To him, it was just another delivery. But when the nurse asked him to personally take the order upstairs due to special instructions, he reluctantly agreed. The elevator ride felt unusually long. When the doors opened, Ethan was greeted by a hallway filled with tension. Doctors whispered among themselves. A woman sat slumped in a chair, her eyes hollow from endless crying. That was Margaret Whitmore, Caleb's mother. A woman who had everything except the one thing that mattered most. Ethan knocked softly and entered the room. And then he saw Caleb. The boy lay still, surrounded by machines that beeped rhythmically. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. It wasn't sleep. It wasn't wakefulness. It was something in between, something haunting. Ethan froze. He didn't know why, but something inside him shifted. He had seen that look before. Not in hospitals, not in strangers, but in his own daughter. There had been a time, after her mother passed away, when Sophie stopped speaking for weeks. She would sit in silence, staring into space, her tiny heart too broken to process the loss. Doctors had called it trauma. Some said it would pass. Others weren't sure. But Ethan hadn't relied on doctors. He had simply sat beside her. Day after day. He told her stories. He sang her favorite songs. He held her hand even when she didn't respond. He reminded her, again and again, that she wasn't alone. And slowly, she came back. Now, standing in front of Caleb, Ethan felt that same invisible wall, the kind no medicine could break. A nurse cleared her throat, reminding him he was just there to drop off food. But Ethan couldn't move. He placed the bag down quietly, his eyes still fixed on the boy. Something told him this wasn't just a delivery. It was a moment. Before he could think twice, Ethan pulled a small toy car from his pocket. It was Sophie's favorite. A bright red car she insisted he carry for good luck. He often kept it with him during long shifts. Without asking permission, he walked closer to Caleb's bed. The room tensed instantly. A doctor stepped forward, ready to stop him. But Margaret raised her hand weakly, signaling them to wait. Something in Ethan's calm presence made her pause. Ethan gently placed the toy car on the bed beside Caleb's hand. Then he sat down. No speeches. No dramatic gestures. Just silence. Minutes passed. Then Ethan began speaking softly. Not to the room, not to the doctors, but to Caleb. He spoke about ordinary things. About rainstorms. About how his daughter loved jumping in puddles. About how losing someone can make the world feel too heavy to carry. His voice was steady, warm, and real, free from the clinical tone Caleb had been surrounded by for months. Nothing happened. The machines kept beeping. The boy remained still. But Ethan didn't stop. He kept talking, as if Caleb could hear every word. 10 minutes turned into 20. Then something so small, yet so powerful, happened. Caleb's finger twitched. It was barely noticeable, but it was real. The room froze. A doctor rushed forward, checking the monitors. Margaret stood up, her heart pounding. Ethan leaned closer, his voice softer now. And then Caleb blinked. Not just a reflex, but a slow, deliberate blink. Tears streamed down Margaret's face as hope, something she hadn't felt in months, returned in an overwhelming wave. Ethan didn't celebrate. He didn't act surprised. He simply stayed there, present, steady, human. Over the next hour, Ethan continued talking, occasionally moving the toy car gently as if inviting Caleb to follow. And little by little, the boy's eyes began to track the movement. For the first time in 642 days. Caleb was coming back. Doctors were stunned. Specialists scrambled to explain what they were witnessing. But there was no scientific formula for this. It wasn't medicine. It was connection. It was patience. It was a father who understood what grief could do to a child. In the days that followed, Ethan was invited back, not as a delivery driver, but as someone Caleb seemed to trust. He sat with the boy every evening after work, sharing stories, laughter, and quiet moments. And Caleb kept improving. Weeks later, he spoke his first word. It wasn't a medical term. It wasn't his mother's name. It was simple. Car. Margaret broke down in tears. The world called it a miracle. News outlets tried to turn Ethan into a hero. But he refused the spotlight. To him, he had only done what any parent would do, he had shown up. Months later, Caleb walked out of that hospital holding his mother's hand, and a small red toy car in the other. Ethan returned to his life, still working, still struggling, still raising Sophie. But something had changed. Margaret Whitmore made sure of that. Not through charity, but through opportunity. Ethan was offered a stable job, one that allowed him to spend more time with his daughter. Sophie got the education Ethan had always dreamed of for her. But more importantly, Ethan realized something profound. Sometimes, the world doesn't need more experts. Sometimes, it just needs someone who cares enough to stay. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like, share, and comment below. Your support helps spread messages of kindness and hope to people who need it most. And before we end, tell me in the comments, do you believe that kindness can heal what money and power cannot? Because somewhere out there, someone is waiting, not for a miracle, but for a person who simply refuses to give up on them. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything.